Hey guys, today we're going to look at the second DBQ, which is the market revolution. And essentially it's going to ask, to what extent did the market revolution change gender and race conceptions in the United States? So I think what I'm going to kind of focus on for this one is our claims, right? So for most of the things that we're looking at, it's kind of like a to what extent did something change, right? And to do that, you really have to make a claim about this changed this, right? And so what you have to sort of do is take a look at the market revolution, right? Which I'm just going to go over right now. And you're going to try to say, how did the market revolution, what did it change, right? And then, what did it not change? So you have to have clear links between, the market revolution caused this change or the market revolution did not cause any change. So there's kind of three parts. What is the market revolution? What's going on with gender? What's going on with race in the United States during this time? And the market revolution is essentially like 1810 to really 1900 or beyond, but we'll kind of look at it from that time period. So the way I think about the market revolution is it is the early industrialization or a technological revolution and a transportation revolution that combines to create the market revolution. And the technologies that we're talking about are like the cotton gin, interchangeable parts, textile mills, and the mechanical reaper. And the transportation revolution is canals, steamboats, and roads. We often call roads, or what they called roads at this time, and I do not know why, is internal improvements. So if you see that word, it just means people are making roads. So there will be some trains at the end of this time period, but people get so confused when you mention trains that I just don't like to mention trains until honestly after the Civil War. Before the Civil War and what we call this antebellum time, just talk about canals, steamboats, and roads, and we'll take a look at that. So some of the things that are happening in manufacturing are interchangeable parts, and Eli Whitney does this, and he also makes the cotton gin. Interchangeable parts has to do with muskets. Before, you would have a handmade musket that was specially designed for each person. So you would go to a guy, right? He would make a gun for you, and this would be like a prized possession. It would always be very expensive. It is going to be a skill. Each piece is like manufactured for itself. If something breaks, you would have to go take it back to the person, and he would have to kind of make it for that individual musket. So what Eli Whitney is going to do is create interchangeable parts, which is going to make the weapons much cheaper and less skilled. So this is one of the trends that's going to happen with this market revolution. The other thing that is going to happen is going to be the Reaper. So anytime I say the word Reaper, people try to think about the Grim Reaper, right? This is my beautiful art, right? We have the dude, Reaper, burr, and then he has the little, what do you call that? Like a scythe, right? So a scythe is how people would reap, right? And reaping has to do with wheat. We often say you reap what you sow. And we're talking about sowing seeds. So sowing seeds is when you're like a guy and you're like, you have seeds and you plant your seeds and then they grow, right? So you sow your seeds and then you're going to reap them. You're going to cut them down, right? So you reap what you sow. The reaper is that sharp edge that you'd be like, sink, right? So if I am going through with a little hand saw thing, right, and I am trying to cut down wheat, I am not going to be able to do very much in a day. And with a mechanical reaper, what we do is we make this huge wheel that is pulled by a horse. And now, in a day, I can clear an entire field. Whereas before, I could just clear like a small amount of space. So now, even if I'm a farmer, I can grow wheat for the market because I have this like mower reaper. And the other thing we're going to have is a plow, which makes it very efficient to, sow things. So we have machines to sow the wheat. We have machines to reap the wheat, and then we can plant and reap this wheat. I'm probably done with that. All right. Oh, I don't need to say that. Anyway. Okay. Sorry. I don't know. Let's go, please. Okay. The other thing that is going to be an important machine is the cotton gin. Eli Whitney makes this, and what it does is it cleans the cotton. So, we'll take a look at this in a minute. So, before the market revolution, life was pretty provincial. People would stay at home, right? We kind of know about this now, but the home was the center of work, of life. Men and women were both in the home. And in kind of the very traditional time, men were kind of seen as superior. They're the head of the household. Women are supposed to be subordinate, and children are definitely supposed to be subordinate to all of that. So you have this kind of hierarchy within a household. And both folks are going to be in the home. Women would do a lot of like manufacturing in a home. Men would as well. And everyone is sort of all hands on deck for farming and cleaning and home life and all of that. So, you know, before the market revolution, everything was centered in the home. People were very self-sufficient. If I'm going to farm, I'm farming to survive. I'm not farming to sell things. I'm farming so I have something to eat in the winter. I'm farming so that I can do this. I am making my own furniture. I'm cutting down my own wood. I'm doing all of these things. There is slavery and indentured servitude, especially in the South. We talked about that, happened since 1619, slavery in the South. And, things are generally skilled. You would have tradespeople who you would go to if you needed something specialized like a gun. So this would be something you would think of as context. We could also look at other things as context as well. The market revolution does not seem like it is revolutionary because it is literally a market revolution. Is just that we are now buying and selling things. I am no longer making my own stuff. So does that seem revolutionary? Not to us today, but it was at that time. If throughout all of human history we were basically only struggling to survive, we are only doing, farming for self-sufficiency, now we are farming for the market. This is an example of the mechanical reaper, right? So imagine this is the horses pull it, and then this is like chopping down the wheat. So you have all this wheat versus like if you had a dude who had like a little scythe and was like here, like wheat, not gonna work, right? So now I can plant wheat. I can harvest enough wheat where I have enough for my family and I have enough to sell. The fact that you are selling your wheat, that is the market revolution. You're still farming, but you're farming for the market. How am I going to get my clothing? Now I'm going to buy it. I'm not going to make it, right? You also have like kind of an increase in goods. You have an increase in, wealth. You have also an increase in debt, especially for farmers because they got to pay all this money. But, yeah. So you also have a transportation revolution. Steamboats are a big one. So before we have steamboats, rivers were one-way streets. Here is the Ohio River. This is a major river. It goes all the way to the Mississippi, right? So if I wanted to say go to, and then you would have the Mississippi here, right? Let's say New Orleans is here. If I wanted to go to, say, New Orleans from Pennsylvania, I don't know, it would be a one-way street. I would put my stuff on like a little wooden barge, right? And then I would just float down the Mississippi. And what would I do when I get to New Orleans? I would take that barge and I would sell it because all of the rivers were a one-way street because of the current. Before the steamboats, you could not go upstream. Now with steamboats, you can, right? So with steamboats, we are connecting together our rivers, right? So here are our rivers, right? And now I can go upstream and I can go down. This is huge. So I have a steamboat going up and down. Now, so let's say I wanted to go to take my goods to the west. Now, what I would do is I would put my goods on a steamboat, and then here I would put them onto a donkey barge because we are going to put it on a canal. Donkey barges. This is the transportation revolution. But it cuts the cost of moving a ton of cargo from $100 to $5. So this is, the transportation revolution is I would have my stuff on a steamboat, then I would transfer it to a donkey barge on one of these canals. The most famous canal is the Erie Canal, because they basically dug a ditch from here to here. This is the ditch, right? So why is this so significant? Well, I could take some goods to New York, right? New York is going to become a major city. I'm going to float it up this river. Then I'm going to put it on a donkey barge on the Erie Canal. Whoa, this is huge. We're going like 1 mile an hour. This is enormous. Then I'm going to go on Lake Erie. I'm going to put it on a different boat. And I can put it on a different boat, right? And I'm going to put it on, I don't know, a different boat. But now we are interconnecting the world. Okay. Or at least the United States. So here it is canals. It is donkey barges. These are canals, right? This is the Erie Canal. This is probably the most famous if I was to remember one. So this is the transportation revolution. Whoop, whoop, right? You would put your goods on this boat. It is connected. These donkeys would then, or mules probably, right? They would just walk, right? And then you could put a lot of weight on this boat because it's being pulled. And it was just way less expensive. You're going to have a lot of cities growing up around the Erie Canal. When we start talking about Seneca Falls and these other places, they're all along the Erie Canal. New York City is going to become a city because of the Erie Canal. Because, you could dig a ditch and then you could put all of that stuff on a barge, and then you could get it pulled by a donkey, and then you could take it to a lake where it would go on another boat and another boat and another boat. Does this sound revolutionary? No, but it is, because it is way faster. Even just think, cargo went from $100 to $5. You can now transport your goods. So if I am a farmer growing wheat in Ohio, right? If I'm a farmer here in Ohio, and I have a whole bunch of wheat, right? I have wheat, boop, 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 right? It doesn't matter if I have enough wheat to sell if I have no one to sell it to, but now I could put it on a boat in the Erie, on Lake Erie, then I could take it to the Erie Canal, then I could take it to New York, and I could sell it to New York. This cost like $5, right? This cost $100. It doesn't really make sense, but it was way more expensive to take it over land. So the Erie Canal is really going to be a major center. It's going to, like I said, make New York a major metropolitan area. New York State and New York City's population is going to quadruple. But then also this becomes almost like the, mecca of, modernism during the Market Revolution. We're going to talk more about that later. So in 1800, through canals, which is probably the biggest one, this would be one day before. It's just to here, but now in one day I could make it like, here by 1857. This is also probably because of trains and other things. But roads, canals, steamboats. These are all major things. You can't take a steamboat on a canal, by the way. People think that. It's just donkey barges. Anyway. Okay. So what starts to develop is what people call sectionalism, right? What is starting to develop is this idea that different regions do different things. The North and the South is probably the easiest, right? The North is going to have what is weirdly called free labor because it is not enslaved, right? You're going to have manufacturing in the North. You're going to have free farmers in the West in like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. And then in the South, you're going to have cash crops. And the major cash crop at this time is going to be cotton, right? So let's take a look at cotton. So when you're looking at the prompt is, to what extent did the market revolution affect race and gender in the United States? And so to start that, you need to know what is the market revolution. People are farming for market. yeoman farmers are doing wheat with machines in the West. You have manufacturing in the North. You have exporting cotton and sending it for manufacture in the South. You have an increase in the middle class. You have transportation, right? The economy is becoming interconnected, and literally people just are buying and selling things rather than making them for themselves. This is the market revolution. So how did like canals and, I don't know, steamboats and the cotton gin and I don't know, how did that change race and gender in the United States? Did it change it? So, when we're looking at context for the prompt, we could look at like all men are created equal. You could go back to the American Revolution. You could take a look at the Constitution with the Fugitive Slave Clause, the Three-Fifths Compromise, the fact that the United States was just getting started. Women couldn't vote. You could look at Republican motherhood. You could look at, other things about slavery during the time of the Revolution. I think one important thing to remember is that by 1789, there were free states who had passed gradual abolition in 1789. So if we're looking at the market revolution after 1800, we are looking at the big thing is cotton. Before 1794, cotton was not a big crop in the United States. The main cash crop was going to be tobacco. When we take a look at Jefferson before, he kind of thought tobacco was going downhill. He thought that slavery, if we ended the slave trade, we would get rid of slavery. We would have more yeoman farmers or family farmers. What he did not see coming is the cotton gin. The cotton gin is going to be invented, and what is odd is it's just a way to clean the cotton. So, I don't know. If we were in class, I have examples of cotton to give to folks so they could see what it is. You can kind of almost see it over here. I don't know, have you ever been walking with your dog, if you have a dog, or I guess a cat, I don't know, maybe even on your pants? One thing about New Orleans is I don't even know what y'all call them. I'm actually from upstate New York. We used to call them burrs or spurs or these little pointy things. They catch on they stick on you, stickers. I don't know. Anyway, if you're walking along and all of a sudden you go through some grass and you get these stickers that stick to your clothing or they stick to your dog, that is kind of what cotton seeds are like. And what you got to do is you got to get those cotton seeds out of that cotton. And you can't imagine if you have a dog that gets these little things in them, you got to brush them out, and it's really annoying. And so what you used to have to do for cotton is just brush out the cotton to get out these seeds. And this cotton gin actually made it easier to clean out these seeds. And so what's weird is you have a machine that makes it easier. So why does everybody say that the cotton gin led to slavery? All right. So it is confusing, and I actually did question this once, but I'll never question it again because people get mad. So the cotton gin makes it easier, and so it's a weird calculation that it made it profitable to grow what was a crappier short staple cotton because you could clean it faster. So kind of environmentally or biologically, we could now grow a short staple cotton that grows anywhere. It's very much easier to grow. And then we can clean the seeds easier. And the thing is, we had a machine to clean the cotton. We have a crop that we can plant, which is short staple cotton, but we do not have a machine to plant and pick the cotton. So because we do not have machines to plant and pick the cotton, there is an increased demand for labor to plant and pick the cotton. So we end the transatlantic slave trade in 1808, right? This is one of the first focuses of the abolitionists because it's obvious the slave trade and the Middle Passage is a horrible, torturous, terrible thing. And Jefferson actually wanted to condemn the slave trade in 1808. So even Jefferson, who owned 600 slaves, was like, hey, this thing is terrible. And so actually in 1808, the Constitution said that we could make it illegal in 1808. We could not make it illegal before 1808, which was actually in the Constitution. And we make the slave trade illegal in 1808. So no more folks are coming over from Africa. Tobacco is less profitable, and like I said, Jefferson thought slavery would just end. But this is essentially the beginning of the Market Revolution. Why do we have an increase in slaves? So, if you look at this graph, this is Doc A. In 1800, we have, you can do 200,000 slaves times 4, like 800,000 slaves, and I can't even do the math. Many more slaves in 1860. And slaves are more valuable. There are many, many, many more slaves. If we ended the slave trade, why are there more slaves? Where are these slaves coming from? What is going on? So let's take a look. How do we have more slaves? Well, the easy answer is that folks are having kids. It's what people call a natural increase in population. So the people who are in America are having kids, and this is where the slaves are coming from. But sadly, they are not coming from Africa. They are coming from other parts of the United States, and we're going to take a look at that. So how are we having more slaves if we're not importing? How are we having more slaves if tobacco is on the decline? The short answer is the cotton gin. One time I questioned the cotton gin. I thought I was going to be smart. I went to some meeting somewhere. I don't even know. And I just thought I'd be smart, and I had to question because every time I get to somewhere, they're always like, the cotton gin is the most important thing ever. And I was like, is it really that important? And I honest to God thought they were like, their hands shook because they were like, do not question the cotton gin. Why do we have an increase in slavery? Cotton gin. Why do we have an increase in slavery? The cotton gin. This is super important. It's an invention at the time. It led to an increase in slavery. Just don't question it. It's because we have to have the labor to pick it. We have the machine to clean it. We need the slaves to pick it. And then where are we going to get these slaves from is the next question. Well, they are going to come from what we call the Upper South. I'm going to go to this slide first, and then we'll take a look at that document. So if you remember in, 1619, right? In 1619, we have folks going to Virginia, right? This is the first area that people are going to go, what we used to call the Chesapeake. Now we've had the Louisiana Purchase, which we could also kind of talk about as an outside fact, right? We have this western expansion. We have the Louisiana Purchase. It's going out, right? Out here. So this is where the old South is. Now we have the new South, when the big one is right here, Mississippi and Louisiana. Where is Louisiana going to get its slave from? We no longer have people coming from Africa. Well, we have this internal slave trade, which is going to provide slaves to New Orleans. Some people call this like the other Trail of Tears because it is a horrible practice where people are tearing families apart in Virginia and selling them south into Louisiana. So if you take a look at Doc C, this is an ad in Natchez, Louisiana, I think it was in the 1840s. I didn't put the date on here. I'd have to go take a look at it. But, they're talking about people coming down, field hands and cooks and washers and ironers. How do they have folks who have, professional expertise coming to Natchez? Well, they're not coming from Africa. They are coming from Virginia. They are coming from Maryland. They are coming from the Upper South. These are plantations that are basically, over. They have, children of slaves that they've owned, and now they are selling themselves. It is a horrible thing that they are doing. Slaves are being sold downriver. So, how does this relate to the market revolution? So not only do we have to say whether it's a change or whether it is the same, right? We could say that slavery existed before, but we could also say that, now we have an increase in an internal slave trade. Now we could say that folks are no longer coming from Africa, but they're coming from the Upper South, and we are tearing families apart within our own country rather than taking them from somewhere else. But whether or not you think that's a change, we have to be able to link it to the market revolution. Did the market revolution cause this? Sure. What could we link it to? Well, we could link it to the cotton gin, but we could also link it to the steamboat, right? What is bringing these folks? What is connecting Virginia to Louisiana? What is allowing them to do that? Well, if I want to connect it to the market revolution, you could bring up the steamboat. because we have a transportation revolution, because we have an interconnected economy, we are now interconnecting the upper and lower South, where we have an internal slave trade that is happening. Anyway. So Calhoun, we kind of went over this in class, right? The slavery is going from a necessary evil, which is what Jefferson kind of called it, and we saw a little bit of that in that Kendi article we looked at. He's not just saying this is a necessary evil. He is saying that slavery is the best institution on earth, right? And he is saying it is wrong to even question it. Why is he going to be doing that, right? What is the link with the market revolution? You can agree that it is the market revolution. You could say it's the cotton gin, right? You could say that the reason why the South is so strongly defending slavery and like propping up white supremacy is because it's an economic necessity. Because the cotton gin is, making slavery an economic necessity, they have to then support slavery. You could say it is something else. You could say it's because they're defending against abolitionist and moral arguments. You could say that it's, them defending against civil rights arguments like the Constitution or the, Declaration of Independence. You don't have to agree that it's the market revolution. You could say that it's not the market revolution at all. You could say it has nothing to do with the market revolution, which I guess is more confusing. But you have to make a claim that connects the market revolution to race relations, and did it change? And all of that, you could say that it is, you could say that it isn't. Gender is the next issue that we're going to take a look at. Again, homes were the focus of economic life. Before the market revolution, it was self-sufficient. The law of coverture, if we wanted to look at that, married women lost their legal identity. This is not going to change, I'll tell you that. And after the revolution, most states have property requirements for voting, and we talked about Republican motherhood before. So before the market revolution, women would make things, and a lot of northern women would like weave and they would manufacture stuff, especially in the cold winter months when they aren't farming, they aren't going outside. They would just basically stay inside and make stuff all winter. They would call this the output system, and then they might sell a few things to make some money. So the traditional, before the market revolution, both are working at home. Men were often seen as the head of the household. Women are subordinate, right? Inferior. Children are also subordinate to both of them, inferior. We are going to change some of these traditional ideas with Republican motherhood after the revolution. Education, you should be more educated to raise children. You should model democracy. You shouldn't just consider the man the head of the household because it's tyranny. Children are a part of the republic. They are not just subordinates. And so some folks, because of the American Revolution, changed their ideas about what a family should look like. And that really does continue into the market revolution. But the market revolution puts a different spin on it. And a lot of it actually has to do with what men are doing. Men are starting to work in the market. They are starting to work outside of the home. They are starting to go to college. They are starting to get involved more with politics. They are getting involved in banking and business and trade. And what people start to say is that men are naturally ambitious. They are tougher, and all of these things. They are better suited. They are smarter for things outside the home. And women are suited for things inside the home. Now, it's okay, according to Republican motherhood, for them to educate their children. So it's good for them to have a little bit of education, but you don't want to go too far. You don't want to go to college. You don't want to try to do these other things. Just enough so you could teach your children. It's okay for women to go to church and be active in the church and to do nursing because these are part of what is good about them. And there's almost this idea of what's called the cult of domesticity, that women are actually better than men in some ways. They are purer, they are more pious, they have submissiveness, and this is good. And women need to have that because they need to kind of hold down this part of society. Men are going to go out, they tend towards vice. They need pure women to keep a moral center for the country. And also, if a woman violates any of this, like piety, purity, or submissiveness, no man will want her, and every man needs a pure woman, or else the whole society is going to fall apart. So this idea of cult of domesticity and separate spheres, men out, women in, women are a little bit better. So just stay home, be to service to men. Women are the better half. They are the center of the home, and yeah. And men alone should, raise the family. It's a little bit of an extension of Republican motherhood. De Tocqueville is a French guy who traveled around America and started making opinions, and he said, although the women of the United States are confined within their narrow circle of domestic life and their situation is in some respects one extreme of dependence, I have nowhere seen women occupying a loftier position, and if I were asked to what singular prosperity and growing strength of the people ought mainly to be attributed, I should reply to the superiority of their women. Yeah, American women often were commented on by Europeans at how amazing they are. Anyway, so women are considered in this almost privileged, right, lofty place in America. But married women have no rights to their wages. Poor women still have to work. And northern white women had more opportunity to work than southern white women. But, not having to work is kind of only this middle class thing and upper class. This is a privilege that most women are not going to be able to afford. And, yeah. So this is kind of a privilege to kind of aspire to this. And we'll take a look at that soon. So what is starting to happen in the market revolution is changing women. And some of it comes down to the textile mills. So if I had to focus on women, I might take a look at textile mills and what is happening with them. So women used to be in charge of making their own clothing and all of this. They would be the ones who are actually spinning. They are the ones who are making all of this stuff. And Samuel Slater is going to go to England and figure out how to make textile mills in the United States. And I do want to kind of point this out. These are not coal powered. These are literally water is turning this wheel and then it goes up. And these women are spinning and they're blah, 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 blah. So essentially cotton goes in and cloth comes out, right? They're going to spin it here. Spinning is making it into thread. Then they're going to weave it. Then they're going to, I don't even know, right? So these textile mills are going to develop mostly in the north, in New England. So he comes back from England, and they're going to set up these textile mills in the north. Now, the problem for Samuel Slater is there are not a lot of people who are willing to work in these mills. People tended to want to just be in farms and all this other stuff. So he had to actually try to get people to work for him. And who he decides to target are called surplus women. A lot of men were moving out west, and there were women who were unmarried, New Englanders. And he's this is going to be my target labor force. Now, that being said, if women came to the mills and it was seen that they lost their piety or purity or piousness, meaning, right, they may have had sex with someone or they're seen as I don't know, doing all this dirty stuff, then no one would want to marry them. So women were not willing to work if their reputation was ruined, and so he had to come up with a way to protect their reputation but then also get them to work. And so what he comes up with are these Lowell mills, where he creates dorms, he lets them write poems, he brings in ministers on Sunday, he makes them go to church, he gives them lectures, they are heavily, supervised so that, you could guarantee that these women are not up to anything terrible. They have bells, they have long hours, and, basically, if these women are coming in, they come in at 5 a.m. until 7 p.m., 73 hours a week. Here they are, they're weaving this cotton into textiles. Textiles is just cloth. Each room had 80 women working at the machines with 2 male overseers, right? So essentially, these women are going to be working and they're living in this boarding house. There are very strict rules. This is Doc D. And he says their intent right here. What is the reason why he's making these rules? Why doesn't he just like do what they do in England and like work these people to death? Because to obtain constant importation of female hands from the country, which is like the rural areas, it is necessary to secure the moral protection of the character while they are at Lowell. We have got to be these moral police, because you have to, they're basically, while these women are working, they're still kind of trying to obtain the cult of domesticity. So is this a change? You can decide. These women also had publications and guest lectures. And I think one thing that does happen at Lowell is they form their own unions, they start to organize, and a lot of these women start to advocate for themselves. So women are working in the Lowell mills. Women are, African American women are always working, but we'll get to that in a minute. But they are not allowed in the political sphere, right? Women are also very active in the church, and some women are very active in the abolitionist movement, which we are going to look at again. But some women start to come back from being involved with church, and being involved with the abolitionist movement, being involved in all of these things. And what they start to say is we should have the right to vote. And some of these folks actually believe that they should have the right to vote because they wanted to make society more just and more pure and better off. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a middle-class white woman who wanted to improve what she saw, or she wanted to improve society as she saw fit. So she was like, why don't we give women the right to vote? We could then enact change and make this a better society. So the Declaration, Seneca Falls Convention, comes out of the abolitionist movement. We are going to come back around and take a look at this in the next lecture. And what they do is they take the Declaration of Independence and basically go at it word for word, and they only change in direct opposition the absolute tyranny over her. They just change that. And then they change the grievances. He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to elective franchise. They want the right to vote. They want to get out of these separate spheres, right? They want to get into that public sphere. They want to be able to vote. And then this is the part where I feel like she's saying that the most degraded men and foreigners have the vote. We should have the vote. Why are you listening to these terrible people when you should be listening to your morally upright wives and daughters? Now, African American women look at this and they're like, what? Y'all are want to work? Well, look at me. I've been working this whole time. And ain't I a woman, right? And, this is kind of calling out some of the hypocrisy, because white women were kind of fighting with each other. This is another middle-class white woman, Catherine Beecher, who is no doubt, right, that we have a division of labor. She basically goes on to say that it is not a good idea for us to vote. It is not a good idea for us to work. We need to stay in maybe farming, but we need to just raise our children. We could maybe be a nurse. We could maybe be a teacher. But our job is to raise the next generation. Our job is not to go in and toil, right? We don't need the right to vote. We don't need to work. And so you have this white woman saying we shouldn't work, we shouldn't vote, and you have this white woman saying we should, and then you have this white woman be like, who are you talking about? I have had to work my whole life, right? So you could put that into perspective. Do women get the right to vote? Not right away. Not until 1920. Do property rights for voting go away? Yes, but we only give the vote to white men. Men actually becomes white, and men becomes one of the main parts of voting. And I think I'll probably talk about that a little bit more, but I think that is probably enough for now. I feel like these lectures are going on forever, but all right, well, that's that second DBQ. Thinking about your claims. In those topic sentences, make sure you're answering the question, what's the part of the market revolution? What is the change, or what is the same? Okay. Take care.